Thank you, Mayor, and I do concur with your goals and your sentiment on many of the fronts. I do agree that we need to do something about recruiting. I've been on board with you for many years in doing that. And I want to remind the council that I have always been a supporter of our police department and our police officers. I have the deepest respect for what they do for us on a daily basis, put their lives at risk for us every day. And I could tell you that my record proves that. Ever since I've been in an elected office, I had voted for all the raises that restored pay, which is compounded in the last couple of years, about 20%, 18.66% compounded. I have voted for the 5% retention bonus that we allotted last year. I have voted for and supported Measure F with you, Mayor, which fixed the pension and workers' compensation concerns that the police officers had over Measure B pension reform. Not only did I do that, but I actually debated one of my former council colleagues and a former police officer, Pete Constant, publicly, and supported Measure F in writing and indeed with my votes on council and in the ballot box, because I want to make sure that we are an attractive city for police to come back, and I took those concerns extremely seriously when our police union voiced them. I have voted for a very aggressive, but a more modest 14% increase, which was rejected. So I want to be clear, I do want to give our police officers a raise. Where I disagree here is not being able to find the money for it. In past, we did negotiate, you're right, there was some unclarity, but not this large. We had never, I feel like we were kind of in the abyss of information. I don't know where, what numbers to trust. All I know is what numbers we're spending. And it's hard to say, I tell you what, it's one of the hardest things to be up here and say no to police raises. It's much more difficult than saying yes. I'd love to say raises for everybody, you know, and other city councils in the past have not had the, I would have to say, courage to say no when it came to pension increases in the past. They never said no. And what ended up happening is we ended up putting the city in huge debts, and the city went into deep layoffs. We had 2,000 positions eliminated, and I know that I wasn't here for those days, but I certainly don't want to revisit them. And I feel that we're walking down a fiscal path, a fiscal irresponsible path, and one that will set a very dangerous precedent here. That's why I'm saying no. Here are some of my fears, and if we could put up my first slide. Yeah. As you can see, our city has estimated, and this information come from forecasts that were done by our pension boards. We had estimated an increased pension cost rising, and I could tell you that if we move the data back further, we used to pay a lot less than $330 million annually. But now, with the expenses of poor performance from our investments in our pensions, with the fact that our pension assumptions have changed, with the fact that more of our people are retiring earlier, the red line is where we're currently expecting to be funding the pensions. That's just the pensions. In a $1 billion annual general budget.
Councilor Khamis, I think you mean to say that's pensions and retiree health care.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And They all eat up a lot of dollars here. And if you could put up my second slide. I want to make it clear. We went out to the voters and we said, hey, we want to charge you a 1/4 cent sales tax because we want to fix your roads, improve response times, et cetera, et cetera. 40 million was for Measure B in June. We said the same thing in Measure G. We were hoping to actually improve some things with the business world. We taxed our businesses more. We expect $12 million for that. But this one contract is $49.3 million, and we have not yet begun negotiating with the 10 other unions that this city employs. And I don't think that any growth in the economy or revenues or potential new taxes is going to be adequate to fulfill this gap that I think is going to be there. Jennifer, if you could put up the other slides that you brought in, number.
Not a 22% pay increase. I believe it's a 20% pay increase.
It is 20, but if you compound it, on an annual basis, if you take 10% and then you add the 6%, that compounds to a higher number than 16%. And if you take the next 4%, it compounds again.
And we include that compounding in our estimates. That's standard procedure, but we don't change the numbers to reflect that. In other words.
That's correct. The compounding is in our cost estimates.
Yes.
And first of all, I didn't say 22%. I said 49.3 million, which is the slide that you said was up there. So my question for Jennifer is, the sales track revenues that you presented earlier, how are they tracking? Where are we on that?
So we only have 1 quarter in. It was the July through September sales activity period. We were down 9.4%. It's the first negative we've seen in many years. A large portion of that was from a misallocation of jet fuel tax to our jurisdiction over last year. In fact, I've just learned it was all 4 quarters last year was overstated. When you take that out on a cash basis, we're down about 3.8%. On an economic basis, around 2% down. Again, we're trying to understand more details of that by economic sector. Business to business was down, but that portion of the sales tax was down. So was general retail very, very slightly. We won't have our next quarter, which would be October through December, our Christmas quarter, till March, about the 3rd week in March. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to do the projections on sales tax, but that's what that one shaped up to be. Yeah,
and that's I know that's one of many different revenue sources, and you did say that we're expected to bring in another 10 million. But as you could tell in your next slide, but don't move this one, we're looking at a $27.4 million deficit. And a 10 million is a nice drop in the bucket, but we still would leave another 17.4.
You know, I wouldn't count that 10 million towards that number. That's not available for that. The way that we do the forecast is that in any given year, as yet another revenue source, is that we assume we're going to have some level of expenditure savings in any given year from a variety of sources and additional revenue, since we don't budget to go in the red on our revenue. And I'm trying to give you assurance that I believe that we'll be able to meet that target and not make the forecast worse for next year. And so that 10 million, as the mayor said, we're running actually, in the report it says 15 million. 5 of it's related to the development fee program, so that has to be kind of set aside to that. But we're running, even with the sales tax down, as long as it doesn't plummet further or have much further problems the rest of the year, we're running, and we're pretty confident we will make our $20 million source estimate for next year to not make that forecast position worse for next year. And we have that number built in every year. And as you know, we usually get pretty close to that. And if we have any money that needs to be taken away from that or put on the table as we progress during the year, we'll put that out as part of the manager's proposed budget or through an MBA. and we'll count it one time or ongoing as appropriate. But through my 25 years, we have never gone negative on that number. In fact, we've been very close the last several years with being in a positive surplus. So I'm not worried that we're not going to make that number based on how everything else is tracking this year. But you can't use that number to help us resolve the
Future
next
funds.
year out. No,
Yeah.
that won't
Okay.
work.
All right, Jennifer. I will. I don't want to get into the murky number of businesses. I just had a few questions, and the numbers are murky, to be sure. The construction and excise tax, as you've said already, it usually goes to pavement maintenance. This would not have been there had it not been for the economic growth that we've had and the construction, correct?
Our development, it's from the investment, the development world is helping us from a residential and commercial activity that's done very well, is what's contributing to this excess 15. And that has been just a policy change for about 5 years that we were told only spend it on pavement.
Yeah, and the reason we say that we only want to spend it on pavement is because I have been told many a times that what we need to spend, and maybe you can correct me, was $100 million a year to get our streets up to proper pavement maintenance.
Yeah, it's at least that, yes. It's been well documented about our pavement maintenance backlog.
And how much, without this and without any of the other funds, would we have spent this year without any of the $17.7 million?
I don't remember how much we had in the base. Let me ask Jim Orpal since I see him in the audience, to see if he can clarify what was our base before we added the 17.7. I think it was 13. I'm not sure. You go ahead.
In terms of total expenditures this year on pavement?
Or in the general fund, I think. You're asking about the general fund?
General fund is about $19 million we allocated in the current year because you had some excess at the annual report.
Yeah.
And then the $17.7 million that was budgeted in the adopted budget.
And then we had other sources.
And you couple that with our other sources, Councilmember, and about $34 million in the current year is allocated for pavement maintenance. In the current year, we have a $100 million need in the current year.
And that's the current year. And that's to get us up to what grade level of pavement here?
Over a 10-year period, the $100 million would get us to a PCI of 70, a good condition.
Over how many years?
Over a 10-year period. And we did just update, we did our annual deferred maintenance and infrastructure backlog report to T&E yesterday, and the council will get that report on the 28th.
So thank you, Jim. And so basically we're removing this potential windfall to the department as a way to balance it and at least keep the 17 million that we promised this 1 year. But this department could have had the 15 plus the 17 for this year, correct?
True, if the council deemed to make the 17 ongoing, because it was a decision to have the 17 was funded one time last year, I think, it wasn't ongoing in the budget to determine how much level the council wants to put into pavement ongoing. Again, the policy choices that you all have to make with all this money, but you're absolutely correct. If you wanted to keep the 17 and consider that an ongoing, you would have had 17 plus the 15.
Right.
But this scenario that is just one of many scenarios to look at the budget preserves what was already promised out of the sales tax this last year.
Correct. With the exception of the other tax, this 15 million would have had an additional pavement repairs. So and let me understand this correctly. Are we
couple of years or whatever the council deems, but so it's just another idea to, again, with a goal to preserve services, not disrupt anything. I think in 17, 18, again, from my experiences of I've been here a long time, 25 years, and all the deficits that I've been involved in balancing, especially the 10 years that were bad, we're on a thin margin here, and I think that's the point I'd like to make. But there are policy choices. You have $1 billion. People do ask me, how can we afford this? I say you have $1 billion budget. It's about your policies and what services you want to allocate that money to, and there's lots of choices, even more than I put on the table here, of how to do that. So that's for us to get direction from the council on.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I'm, you still have my respect as, Scotty, the engineer, when it comes to getting our fiscal house working. And so if you can go to the next slide that you prepared, I'd appreciate it. This is what concerns me the most, and this is why I'm coming to the decision where I can't support it. The large deficits that are ahead of us and the unforeseen potential downwards in the economy, and there's a lot of variables here that we have not been faced for. I've been in office for 4 years. We've had some variables, but not this many. The $27.4 million does not include the $25 million in one-time funds, which included pavement maintenance for this year. And we don't know if 2018, 2019 will have this robust growth in the economy where we can get $15 million in excise tax to help cover it.
Yeah, just to be clear, because this is an incremental forecast, if in fact how we resolve 17, 18 will really determine how much of a one-time you'd carry over to the next year. So I can't really predict that it would be 25 million. It depends on what happens with all the other variables in 17, 18. So, and how the council prioritizes that. So I don't want to say it'll be 25 million, but I will say that from year to year, there's some element of a one-time that gets carried over. But, and usually the council tries to minimize that to the extent possible.
Yeah. So, you're saying that this is this the worst case scenario you're talking about?
No, but I also don't want to leave you with the impression that there'll be a one-time carryover of 25 million either. I think it's more the focus is there'll probably be some one-time funded things that the council will want to consider from any given year. I think it's what, again, I don't have a robust booming revenue projections here. It does have a slowdown. It does have some increased retirement costs. Probably those retirement costs are not conservative enough based on the recent Chiron numbers we're getting even for the 17-18 year. That's a concern. But until we go through all of our revenues and all of our expenditures, I can't really tell you how that number is going to change. But I do say that there's probably more downside risk than upside risk is what I would leave you with, which was a question that was asked of me by Councilmember Davis.
Do these numbers include Measure F readjustments?
No, but also it does not. And again, I do think, the 6.5 and the 4.8, all things being equal with the forecast, those are within striking distance, especially with they're so far out in the forecast. The 27.4 million is obviously more of a concern, but I will say that I think, proactively seeing this number, the administration is working on some ways that are not just tax increases that could reduce that and minimize that to the extent possible. I want you to know that we're trying to proactively look at that as you would expect us to try to figure out how to minimize any hit that, and that would be more of a closed session discussion.
I appreciate that, and I really value all your work and all your creativity in trying to find revenues for our city, and I hope you don't take it my questioning in any other manner than it's intended.
I don't. Thank you.
What worries me even more is that we're setting unachievable expectations for our 10 other unions. Mm-hmm. Are we going to tell our firefighters that they're not deserving of a raise of equal size? I don't know if we're ready to make that decision, are we?
I think that we need to make that decision based on the bargaining when it occurs. I do think there are significant recruitment and retention issues with the POA. That's a bargaining unit-wide issue that does not apply in other circumstances, including with fire, and I think that that needs to be taken into account when we get to those negotiations. Fire's contract is not up for another year and a half.
Yeah, no, I get it, and that's going to be in the 2018, 2019, which worries me even more. And so I want to be clear. I think our police are worth every single penny of this raise, and my issue is not with our police and whether they're deserving or not. They are. I just have, fundamentally, I feel that I need to make the right choice for whatever I think the city could go into some problems if we go down this track. And during the Measure F discussions, we were told by and I'm bringing it back to the recruiting here because I think absolutely recruiting is essential here. And in fact, without being revisionist, we've had a lot of problems getting cooperations with our POA or police union with getting support from them on recruiting efforts. It's not a secret that in the first 2 years of my tenure here that we didn't even there were ads asking other departments to come here and poach our officers. And during the discussions to put Measure F on the ballot, we were told that our police union was going to draw a letter signed by the mayor and the chief, and it was going to go out after we put it on the ballot, and then later they told us it was going to come out after it passed. I'm super delighted that I heard during a press conference today, 2 months after it passed, that a letter finally went out. And I want to thank the mayor and our negotiating team for getting that letter out. I just felt that it needed to be out at least 2 months before today. And it was interesting that it came out today. I also don't think that they've been asking people to come back. And I don't know if you can cue up the video. But this discussion happened during a pension board meeting just last Thursday. And I was stunned to hear this discussion come out from Franco Votto, the treasurer from our police union. And I don't know if you get that video.
Getting rehires back here.
I got people that are going, can I come back? Can I come back? And because of this issue specifically, I'm going, no, not until the ordinance is, you cannot, because you're going to get put into this pool and we don't know what's going to happen. Do not come back. And they're just calling, I heard they're done. No, but they're not in place yet. So we don't want that number to grow.
Very important to the agreement and very important to getting rehires back here. I
got people that are going, can I come back? Can I come back? And because of this issue specifically,
I think
no,
it's
not
looping.
Until the ordinance, you cannot, because you're going to get put into this.
Needless to say, I know that they're. Like I said, I was stunned to hear that they were telling police officers not to come back, even with this concern that they had with the whether how quickly they can go back into measure. What is tier 1? It's a super complicated process. We had, you were there, Jennifer, and I. In any case, I really hope that our police union is dedicated to returning our police officers, recruiting them, and I'm encouraged by the letter that was signed today. And I'm hoping that we can go forward and ask folks to come back and actually accept them back. One other thing that makes my decision even more heavy-hearted, I don't want us to go back. If I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, and we're going to come out swinging. All the tax revenues are going to be above expectations. All the other unions are going to say we're willing to stick to a very modest increase, and we're going to find new revenues that Jennifer was talking about. But if we don't, we're going to end up potentially laying off people. And I don't know how many of us, I know that the mayor has been in office long enough to feel the layoffs personally, and Councilmember Rocha as well. And I have done it as a business owner. It is one of the worst feelings ever, laying off people, telling them that they cannot get a paycheck, pay for their homes, their kids' schools, what have you. I don't want to go down that path, and I'll leave it at that. I'm hoping that things work out, but I cannot vote for something that I don't think we can afford, bottom of the line.